My mother-in-law accuses me of wanting to take over the family property. After rummaging through my things, but in front of the family, I tell her it was a trap set up by her son. My husband and I have been together for 4 years. We have lived together for the past 2 years and have been married for a year. Our relationship is pretty peaceful if you leave out the devil that is my mother-in-law, although I honestly don't feel bad for her because she doesn't seem to like many people. So we've made peace with that. We maintain a cordial relationship with her. We invite her to dinners and events, and she does the same, but we don't have a deeper relationship. A couple of months ago, my father-in-law passed away due to a heart attack. That really made me more understanding of my mother-in-law since I was very young when I lost my dad. I know what that kind of thing does to families, especially my mom. I know how difficult it was for her after my father died, so I made an effort to be nicer to her. We decided to start inviting her to dinner every other weekend, and I could tell that at least at first she was grateful for it. After that, I don't know why, but she started snooping all over our house. It took us a while to realize it, but after a while we were pretty sure that was exactly what she was doing. Every time, before or after dinner, she would excuse herself to go to the bathroom and take a while. But we never thought much about it, beyond the fact that the food had upset her and she needed to get healthy. Then she started to find out things we had never told her and started asking us about them. Every time we tried to confront her about how she found out, she told me she just guessed. But we weren't fools. We knew it was impossible for her to be so lucky with her predictions and for them all to be absolutely correct. For example, a couple of weeks ago, she somehow found out that my husband was considering a merger with another company. She was against that kind of thing because she thought it would show weakness, and she didn't want that to be the legacy of the company my father-in-law had built. So she confronted my husband about it, and we were baffled as to how she had found out since neither of us had told her anything. We knew he wouldn't take it well, so we planned to break the news to him. However, she found out, and that was the end of it. They had a little argument about it, and in the end, my husband had to give in and abandon his plans because his mother made a fuss. Also, since my father-in-law's death was so recent, I didn't want to make her feel worse. But no matter how hard we tried, we couldn't understand how he had found out. Then, just 2 weeks ago after dinner, she confronted me about my plans to freeze my eggs. I had never talked about it with anyone other than my husband. When I asked him how he knew, he told me he had been lucky with his fortune-telling. Then he started giving me a lecture about how bad it was for me, based on his own feelings that were not backed up by facts. He told me that I was young, and that instead of doing all that, I should start trying to have children and focus more on my family, instead of spending all day working, because that way things would be much better for everyone, and I wouldn't have to end up freezing my eggs and spending a ton of money on that. Obviously, after that, I was really upset, because she was somehow discovering things that I had no way of knowing. By then, we had already deduced that he was snooping every time he came to our house. It wasn't hard to figure out because our home office is across the hall from the bathroom. So we figured she must be lying to us about going to the bathroom and not saying goodbye to last night's enchiladas, or maybe she was just taking a couple more minutes to look through our papers. The fusion plans were in the office, and I had a few tabs open on my laptop that were also about freezing my eggs, where I was doing my research just before my mother-in-law arrived for dinner that day. These were the main clues that led us to discover what was really going on. But apart from these two, there were a couple of minor incidents that are not worth mentioning, but that alerted us. So after dinner 2 weeks ago, when my mother-in-law left after giving me her lecture on the importance of family values, especially when we're young, I really lost my patience. I told my husband I couldn't do this anymore. I did my best to be a little more understanding with her, even though he had always made it clear that he didn't like her, but now he was really invading our boundaries. I thought maybe we'd have to cut back on dinners together because this was getting out of hand. Of course, if we accused her of snooping, she would deny it and somehow play the victim, so we knew there was no point in confronting her. My husband agreed that she had crossed the line and that something had to be done about it. We spent a couple of days very upset about all this, but it was my husband who came up with a plan to screw her over. And it was actually brilliant because this was going to totally prove that she had been snooping around in our stuff. We decided to print a fake divorce petition and made sure it looked real enough to convince someone. We made the terms of the petition very unfair to my husband. We both laughed a lot because it was really funny. Since we made the terms of the petition sound like I was seeking to take all the property belonging to him and his family, I knew that would really infuriate my mother-in-law. She already disliked the fact that her son had married someone from a less privileged family than her own. I'm not saying I grew up poor or anything, but to my mother-in-law, if you cross a city line, it's like you're a commoner or something. However, he is not arrogant about it, unlike his mother. Anyway, we knew this was going to make her mad, and our plan actually worked. A couple of days ago, we invited her over for dinner, but this time we also invited other family members. We had a big family dinner with my sister-in-law, her husband, and their children, and my husband's uncle and aunt. I get along well with them, and I knew this might give them a laugh too. We were having a good time after dinner when, as usual, my mother-in-law excused herself to go to the bathroom, but this time she didn't return until almost 30 minutes later. We knew what he was doing, but my sister-in-law started asking if he was okay. We told him not to worry, that when he comes, he always stays a little longer in the bathroom, that we thought our house helped him feel better and that it was normal. Just as we expected, a couple of minutes after everyone got worried, my mother-in-law burst into the room with the papers we had purposely left in one of the office drawers, waving them angrily and yelling at me. He started cursing me, saying that I had turned out to be exactly the kind of person he had hoped I would be. He said he always suspected he was wrong to let his son marry me because he should have known I would look for the first opportunity to ruin their lives. And that was exactly what I was doing. Obviously, my husband and I weren't surprised by any of this, but everyone else was very confused and tried to ask him what was going on. Then she told them she had found those divorce papers in the office and started telling everyone that I had filed for divorce. My sister-in-law's husband asked her, then she wasn't sitting on the toilet, and my mother-in-law looked at him strangely and continued with her attack. Under the terms of my petition, I was going after everything they owned, all their property and even their company. Even though my husband had been nothing but kind to me, and I knew perfectly well that I had no right to any of that, she said that she had probably been waiting for an opportunity like that after my father-in-law's death. And since this was the perfect time to attack, I began to show my true intentions. He called me a gold digger, a snake, and said he wished nothing but the worst things for me. My husband and I stayed calm. We didn't say anything, and I didn't lose my temper because we all saw that this was going to happen. We just waited patiently for him to finish his monologue while the others remained completely confused. When she seemed to run out of energy, we decided to finally tell her that this was a trap we had set for her and that she had obviously fallen into it. I told him that it was my husband and I who printed those papers for him to find, because we knew this was going to happen. And it was pretty foolish of him to assume that even if I was filing for divorce, I would keep the divorce papers in the same home office that we both use frequently. Then she finally started to look confused and looked through the petition papers once more and finally began to realize that we had tricked her. I told her we had done all this just to prove that she had been smoking every time she came to our house. We made sure there was family around when she did this scene so everyone would know what kind of person she was and how much she hated me, even though I had nothing against her and had even tried to be nice to her over the past few months. But she wasn't grateful. She was an incredibly selfish woman who couldn't see the good in anyone. We told her that after everything she said, there was no way we were letting her get involved in our lives again, and that we were done after such a level of disrespect. So she immediately started crying, saying she'd been cheated on, which was obviously true, but the truth came out that way, and we didn't want to hear anything more from her after that. The dinner ended on a sour note, and everyone else there decided not to talk about it anymore. But my mother-in-law has been seeking sympathy from anyone who will listen. By this point, almost the entire family knows what happened at dinner that day. Some people are understanding with her. Some people have messaged us to tell us we did the right thing, but everyone seems to have an opinion on this. We don't really care about that anyway. But we do believe that my mother-in-law has taken this very badly, because in addition to telling everyone, she has been sending messages to my husband and trying to call him from time to time. He's been telling her I'm a malicious daughter-in-law, that I've been messing with his head, and all sorts of nonsense about me. He's been saying that I'm manipulating him against him and that I'm eventually going to break up this family because apparently if I can do something like this, I'll be able to do worse things in the future. The funniest thing is that it was my husband's idea, although I knew she just lost her husband a couple of months ago and was just trying to take care of her son like any mother would, and that's why she had been steaming. Now, although the idea was actually my husband's, I agreed with it. The only thing I feel guilty about is that we did it just a couple of months after her husband died. I know she was really devastated after that. I don't feel bad about anything else. This is the only part that I feel is weighing on me a little, and my conscience is pricking me now. So, you think I should apologize for that? Nothing else. Just for that part. Addition. The reason my husband hasn't blocked his mother yet is because she's obviously older, and he doesn't want to regret his actions if something were to happen to her. I think it's a pretty valid reason for not wanting to block her. Even though she's been horrible to us the past few weeks and we don't want to hear from her right now, but in case of emergencies, we still want to be accessible to her, because otherwise I think it would be very unforgivable. Update 1. I hope you are all well. It's been 6 days since my last update, and we're done feeling guilty about what we did. Because honestly, if she hadn't been snooping, if she hadn't actively gone out and sought out what we were doing, instead of just doing the right thing and waiting for us to come to her with whatever news we had, then none of this would have happened. And besides, There was no need to make such a scene at the family dinner. If she was really that upset about what she found, she could have waited and confronted us privately. Then maybe it would have been less embarrassing for her when she realized she was wrong. But no, he immediately believed the worst. He decided to come and confront me in public, wanting to humiliate me. He said the most horrible things about me. So I really don't think I should feel bad about what I did. The fact that her husband recently passed away is sad, but it is no excuse for her behavior. Very honestly, anyway, as I mentioned, there were some people who contacted us to tell us that we had done the right thing, because the rumors were really running throughout the family thanks to my mother-in-law. I don't know why he had to go and tell the whole family just to get a little sympathy. If anything, that distanced us from her even more, because at least we weren't going around telling everyone what had happened and trying to paint ourselves as victims. Yes, what we did at dinner was perhaps not the prettiest thing. We shouldn't have invited other family members, but they're pretty close to us, and we didn't want her to be able to deny anything about her behavior later, because I'm pretty sure she would have. At least now everyone knows the truth and they can decide and have their own opinions. And little by little that number has been growing, because as I mentioned at the beginning, there are a lot of people in the family who really don't get along with my mother-in-law, because she's not a very nice person in general and has a tendency to look down on people. Not just me in particular, he always has something negative to say about everyone. So he has a kind of reputation, a very negative one, and this is not playing in his favor. I'm so glad this went wrong for her because she was the one who decided to start gossiping about it. Obviously, the people who were at the family dinner haven't said anything about it yet and have made it very clear that they are completely fine with being on good terms with all of us. They just don't want to get involved in the drama, and we respect that. We even apologized to them for putting all this on them, but we also explained our side of the story, why it was important for them to be there at dinner so they could witness my mother-in-law's behavior, and so she couldn't deny it later. And they understood that too. So everything's fine between us. And we respect the fact that they don't want to get dragged into this mess because, honestly, we wouldn't want to be in their shoes either. And I'm pretty sure there are some people who are also sympathizing with my mother-in-law. They can continue to do so. Most of them are the elders of the family and have also made their point of view clear. It's not like they've contacted me directly or anything, but I've heard from some people that these older relatives are siding with my mother-in-law and have been telling everyone not to talk to us and somehow pressuring us to apologize. Well, this will go on for a while. I see it coming. But I'm glad to have some support on my side, at least even without that. I think my husband and I would have been enough for each other. But we are grateful for what we have. Update 2. Everything can change in 2 weeks, and it's a little annoying, not because of the situation itself, but because my mother-in-law thinks she's entitled to something when she's the one who acted wrongly. But that's how things are with her, and one day she'll realize all the wrongs she's done. Only maybe that day will come when I do something very wrong and face the consequences. Basically, for the first few days after my last update, we didn't hear from her, and everything was going well because we thought this would eventually calm down. But then she decided to send a very cruel email to my husband about me, saying that everything I had said in the petition would eventually come true one day. And that day, my husband was going to regret not having paid attention to his mother about me, because she knew that I was only after him for his money and social status and nothing else. And she knows what kind of woman I am. She knows that if I'm willing to stoop that low just to put her in her place, there's no telling what I might do. He also said that he would crawl back to her for comfort, but she wouldn't be there for him because she would be so hurt that in this extreme situation, he was choosing me over her. And the worst part is that he still has no idea that the plan wasn't even mine. It was his son who came up with it. After that horrible message about me, my husband decided to tell her that it wasn't even my idea, that it had been his plan, because he was fed up with her constantly interfering in his life. This was nothing new. She had always been like this since he was a child, and always tried to control him. He never liked his girlfriends and basically never liked anyone he was romantically involved with. I was obviously the last person, and he obviously didn't like me either. And he never understood why, since I had never done anything to make her feel that way. And in fact, despite her behavior, I always maintained my dignity and was very civil and cordial with her. After he told her it was his plan, he thought maybe she'd calm down with me. But then she decided to turn everything around and make it my fault. I don't even know how it was possible. I have to say I was quite surprised. But anyway, when he found out it was his idea, he took a couple of hours, but then finally responded saying that it didn't matter whose idea it was. What mattered was that I had agreed, and if I truly respected her as my mother-in-law, I would never have agreed to something so low and disgusting. So, surprise. Surprise. It was still my fault, and she wasn't willing to admit that maybe I wasn't to blame in this situation. It's literally crazy. Anyway, When he started blaming me for all this, my husband couldn't stand it anymore. He had literally handed it to her on a silver platter that it had been her idea all along. And I had nothing to do with it, other than the fact that I had supported it. But even then, she somehow turned it into something ugly and made it my fault, saying that I had probably turned him against her to do something like this. It was the last straw for him, so he decided to block her. And honestly, it was something that had to happen a long time ago. She had been trying her luck for a while and had already gone too far. I personally was quite glad that he finally decided to block her because I really didn't want this kind of drama to continue. It was already getting annoying, so after blocking her, we decided that this would finally end. But of course, that wasn't the case because my mother-in-law decided to show up at our house the next day because she couldn't get in touch with him, and that's the worst thing in the world for a narcissist. In fact, if I'm being precise, she came just to confront her son because she made that very clear when I tried to talk to her. We opened the door, let her in because we were trying to be polite about the whole thing, but as soon as she was inside, she started yelling at my husband saying that he was letting me manipulate him and that he needed to be smarter about what he was doing, that he looked like an idiot because he was letting someone like me manipulate him so easily, emphasizing that part as if implying that I was not very intelligent and that my ability to manipulate him was very low. She told him that she wasn't going to allow him to treat her that way, especially when she had lost her husband so recently because it wasn't the right thing to do, and he needed to know. He told her she was on the wrong path, and that the only solution would be to get me out of her life somehow, and if she couldn't do that, at least what she could do was teach me to be more respectful to her instead of being so disgusting. I didn't like that at all. I tried to talk to her and tell her that she couldn't talk to me like that. And then he literally turned around and came at me, pushing into my personal space, and started telling me that I had no right to tell him what he could or couldn't do under his son's roof. He literally started waving his finger in my face, and it was crazy. I took his finger and put it on his nose because no one was going to come and talk to me like that, especially not in my house. And when my husband saw all this happening and that I was losing my patience, he decided to physically grab her by the arm and told her that he didn't trust her, especially after everything that had been said and done. My mother-in-law didn't like that at all and started crying, saying she couldn't believe he treated her like that after everything she had lost in her life. He claimed he was just trying to protect him and that he was trying to protect him from me. People like me didn't deserve it and he should know it. By this time, I was really fed up with the whole thing, so I told my husband I was going for a walk and would come back after she left because I really didn't want to ruin my mood by dealing with her. It was a Sunday, and I'd had a pretty hectic week, so I didn't want to deal with her and ruin my weekend. After that, I went for a walk and came back about an hour later. And by that time, she was already gone. So that was it. And now we're not talking to her, and we're pretty happy with that because, honestly, we have nothing to say to her, and I hope she has nothing to say to us after this point. I think he's caused us enough trouble. We don't need more. So I really hope she stays away from us after this. Update 3. I have good news. A couple of weeks ago, my husband and I found out I was pregnant. I've been thinking about freezing my eggs, but I guess it's no longer necessary. We thought about it and decided to go ahead with it because now is a good time to do it. We recently posted it on social media and everyone congratulated us. But of course, my mother-in-law had something negative to say. She had been blocked everywhere, so she decided to contact us through a new email account. She told my husband that now that he was going to start a family with me, he was going to see my true colors. He wished her luck, saying she was definitely going to need it. Obviously, she's not going to have anything to do with me, my husband, or her future grandson. With that email, he sealed his fate. He was very passive-aggressive about it. But anyway, we're happy, and you can't take that away from us no matter how hard I tried. Update 4. I can't believe it's been a year since I last wrote. I had my issues with my mother-in-law back then, but now we're best friends. Well, that last part isn't true, but I have become a mother, but much more has changed in my life, in our lives recently, besides my mother-in-law's. My little girl was born big and strong, and we are happy with her. It's been hard for us to adapt to being parents, but I think we've got all that down pat. Now, my mother-in-law has tried everything to annoy me during my pregnancy, but she hasn't succeeded. He hasn't gone the traditional route of continuing to text me from different numbers or turning people against me. That's not what you expect with someone like my mother-in-law. Instead, he tried to make my husband jealous so he would leave me, and then he did something even crazier. About a few weeks or months after my last update, she started inviting a young man to her house for dinner, someone young like my husband. You might be thinking, this woman got herself a lover. Good for her, but it wasn't a new son she adopted, not legally, of course, to replace my husband. I told other people that he was the son every mother wanted because he did for her what my husband didn't. He loved her, listened to her, and cared for her like a mother. My husband didn't care for a second, and even thought it was funny what his mother was doing. He said, "When we thought he had a stomach bug, it was cute. Now it's even sad." When she saw that my husband didn't care and carried on with his life as if nothing had changed, which was not my mother-in-law's intention, she increased her efforts. She started going to the family business because, according to her, her new son should start learning about the business. However, the business was left completely in the hands of my husband. Her sister has a stake in the company, but she doesn't participate in it and has her own career. My mother-in-law, on the other hand, received her house and some money, so it is not my mother-in-law's decision who works there. Until he finally figured none of it was working, and he needed to ramp up his efforts, or he just said, "it," and didn't hide it anymore. Began dating her newly adopted son, or at least openly. Now there's a rumor that she might marry him, which may be true or just more rumors to annoy us, but my husband and sister-in-law aren't interested because, as I explained, he doesn't own any of the company and all it will do is ruin their future if something bad happens. But beyond hoping she doesn't do anything stupid, my husband isn't going to do anything for her. He's tired of doing it, like when we invited her to our house because she was upset about her husband. But if we count from the time she introduced him as her son, as the date she started dating him, we're talking about a little over 5 months after losing her husband, she was in a new relationship, which to me seems like a clear example of emotional incest because it would have been better to introduce him as her boyfriend from the very beginning than to say he was her son first. It seems like you have some kind of perverse fantasy. Well, I guess my mother-in-law has done more things during this time, but we were busy with my pregnancy and then with our daughter, so that would be what we have discovered or what has come to us. Update 5. About 2 years ago, my mother-in-law got married. We were invited to the wedding, but few attended. Not even her sister wanted to go through with that nonsense, according to her words. She was married for a little over a year until he asked for a divorce. But during all that time, she paid for the trips they took together, the car, and other expenses he had, since his income as a physical trainer wasn't high enough to support that lifestyle. He even put the house they lived in his name too. As a result, she has exhausted her savings, had to sell her house in the divorce to divide her assets, and had to move to a new, significantly smaller home. Of course, she asked my husband to help her buy out her soon-to-be ex-husband because she didn't want the family home to leave the family. But my husband offered to buy the entire property since he wasn't going to help her. So my mother-in-law agreed, although in the meantime, there were several scandals about her because her son wasn't helping her and things like that. Now we have moved into that house, which is much bigger. After making some improvements, my mother-in-law has at least managed to buy a house with the share she got from hers. But as for her personal finances, things are not looking good at all, because she has been asking my husband and sister-in-law for money. Neither of them wanted to give him anything, especially my sister-in-law. She was the most vocal in telling him that he was making a mistake by marrying that man. I guess she inherited some things from her mother, but unlike her mother, she was right. So, that's all with my mother-in-law. Sometimes I think that her jealousy, hatred towards me, and all that poison she had inside led her to make the worst decisions. So, when I hear something new about my mother-in-law and start to think I hate her, I try to calm down because I don't want to end up like her. Hate has consumed her, and I don't want to go down that path.